Is up, everybody? It's Rob here with the Tuesday nightly watch list, and the market ended up today green with the Dow up over 1.5%, and the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq up over 0.5%. Coming into the morning, right? The futures were green. Investors have calmed down, right? We've been seeing Google and Alphabet, well, they're the same company, but Google, right, stock has been soaring to all-time highs after the Berkshire Hathaway investment, while at the same time, we're learning now that they're potentially, a big player now in the AI chips race because Meta has came out and said that they're going to purchase less Nvidia chips and they're going to buy Google chips. So, right, the market's been gassing on that. It's a short week with Thanksgiving and we're now having investor optimism. Investors have the green light and the market's getting bullish again. So the first thing I want to talk about, right, is Google and Nvidia, right? That is the big news that's driving the market yesterday and today. Well, what's going on, Rob? Well, Nvidia was down around 4.5% pre-market today. And that's because Google came out and said, well, it was actually Meta. They came out and they said they're going to start to buy Google chips, okay? Now the market is going, whoa, 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 whoa. What if Google could be the next big AI play here with their chips? Maybe that's going to take market share from Nvidia. So that's why Nvidia was down over 4%. And you've just been seeing Google rocket up. It's going absolutely crazy. So that's moving the tech sector of the market. Big news out of that. But we actually had Nvidia come out today and they were kind of, fighting back, trying to maintain their stance. And they said, quote, I'm quoting Nvidia today, our GPUs are a generation ahead of Google's AI chips. So, right, take the news with what you want, but the market's going crazy off of it, right, sending Google to all-time highs. So that's what you have to hear from it. Nvidia is saying, our chips are a generation ahead, but their stock's down 4% pre-market. Well, that's what you're going to get with the AI bubble like this because people are baking so much into Nvidia's future cash flows. So the smallest sign, of weakness or losing market share, well, that's going to ding the stock down over 4% pre-market. And I also wanted to share with you, right? We're now seeing the U.S. 10-year yield dip below 4%. And the last time this happened was in late October. So for those that don't know, bond yields and prices are inversely related. So what I mean by that, right, is as people buy bonds, the yield will go down. But as people sell bonds, as the price goes down, the yield will go up. So the 10-year just dipped below 4%. Now, why is that important for some people, right? Well, that is actually going to affect interest rates, right, on different, forms of debt and loans. Now, the big one is mortgages, because for those that don't know, right, a 30-year fixed mortgage is actually based primarily on the 10-year treasury. And there's actually usually a 2% spread added. So right now, right, with the 10-year treasury sitting at 4%, one could expect 30-year mortgages to be at 6%. Now you add that 2% because a mortgage is more risky. So it's called default risk. The 10-year treasury, right, the payments are backed by the U.S. government. So people say that's relatively risk-free because, what is the chance that the government stops paying their debt? Well, there actually, is a chance it happens, relatively speaking, but is it actually going to happen? Probably not. So that's why they always call it the risk-free rate. U.S. Treasuries, it's sitting at 4%. So a mortgage, right? Someone could stop paying their mortgage. So if you're going to, take that debt, it's more risk. So usually there's a 2% spread. So there you go. I wanted to share that because with you, if you're trying to buy a house or you're checking out mortgages, well, the 10-year just dipped below 4%. So mortgages now are sitting around 6%, relatively speaking. And for those that don't know, also you might be asking, well, Rob, why is a 30-year mortgage tied to a 10-year treasury? You're talking about a 30-year loan and a 10-year loan. Well, the reason behind that is because a 30-year mortgage doesn't actually last 30 years for the most part, right? Most people sell their houses earlier because maybe they move, maybe they pay off the mortgage earlier, maybe they default on the loan. So on average, right, when a mortgage gets sold, it really only lasts for 10 years, primarily. So that's why it's usually based off of the 10-year treasury yield. So there's my little spiel for you about mortgages, the rates right now. So big news though, 10 years coming down, right? That's what people watch for mortgage rates. So dip below 4% since late October. Okay, that's the news on that. And then we also had here, right? Alibaba was up over 3.5% pre-market because they reported their earnings and it was a beat. So they rallied. Now I'm telling you guys about that because China has been a big trade, okay? You can go look at big investors like David Tepper, and the China trade is always a big one, right? There's a lot of volatility because, some of these China names have been, beaten up. And, just recently over the past quarters, you've seen a run up in them and a lot of people talking about going long China. So you want to watch China plays because there's a lot of volatility in them, a lot of opportunity. So Alibaba was up over 3.5% based on their earnings. So, this China trade, well, there you go. And then Kohl's stock, the retailer, right? They beat expectations and their stock was up over 30% today. Insane return, insane move, but up over 30% today as they beat expectations for the third quarter and they raised their future guidance. So what does that mean? Raising guidance. Well, what that means is the management, right, is telling investors, hey, we actually think we're going to, bring in more money, right, revenue, bring in more money, and possibly at the same time, right, net more, right, after all of our expenses, taxes, whatever it can be, we're expecting to bring in more money and make more money. So that's why they raised guidance. So the stock popped, right, because they beat the current quarter expectations that the analysts were predicting, while at the same time raising the guidance. Sent the stock over 30% today because it's heavily shorted, and it's one of those beat up names, right? It's a retailer. Who, the big bear cases, who's going to the store buying clothes, right? You have Amazon, you have online retailers, right? People aren't going to the store anymore buying stuff from Kohl's. Well, stock's up 30% on that. Big news. And then also today we had a headline come out where it says Trump weighs to out Kash Patel from FBI director role. Essentially, fire him, kick him out of the role. Well, that was actually fake news, okay? So the White House press secretary came out and said that it was not real. Don't believe it, fake news. So I want to, get that out there because you're going to see this headline circulate around, and I don't want you guys to fall for something that's fake. Now, that's not really stock related or whatever, directly going to move the market or individual security. But nonetheless, the Trump administration does affect, policy and the market. So just wanted to share it with you. And if anything, I wanted to let you know, like, whenever you get headlines, you should always try to verify them. Now, I know people are always quick, right? You get a headline, you're like, boom, 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 let's react to it. Let's make a play, right? As soon as news comes out, right, you'll see things go up or down quick. And a lot of time you can get hurt by that because if people are circulating fake news and you didn't take the time to verify it, well, it can go against you. And right here was a little example I wanted to share with you guys so you guys didn't get burned. So it's a short week, okay? Today is Tuesday, and the market's going to be closed on Thursday for Thanksgiving. And Friday, the market closes early at 1 p.m. So do be aware of that, okay? For your option contracts and just trading. And if you're trying to get anything in your long-term portfolio, be aware of the market hours. And guys, that is the news I have for you, right? Not too much to share, right? It's kind of a slow week with the, market closing, short week in the markets, but still some big stuff coming out with AI. That's always moving the market. AI is the big name that everyone's talking about. And Nvidia, right, down over 4.5% pre-market based on this headline, right, revolving around Google and Meta switching to, buy some Google chips. So that's what I got for you. And then just to talk, relative about the market, we are going to get our long-term deposit here shortly. And, we were looking at a lot of different names. And unfortunately, in the past couple of trading days, a lot of names had moved up big time, right? I was sitting here about a week ago going, oh my God, we have so much opportunity in the long-term portfolio. I never seen so many things that I wanted to add to, right, at the same time. But a lot of stuff has been, coming down and then just rocking it back up. For example, right, we just recently saw Chipotle at $30, right? Well, today it had a big rally up over 7% today up to $33. So for right now, right? We wanted to add to that to our long-term portfolio, but we're gonna have to chill because, we're not gonna add after the stock was up over 7%. Novo Nordisk, I was just talking about it on last night's watch list, and right, that cracked down over like 10% pre-market on some silly news. And I was telling you guys, right, it was bogus news. And the stock, what did it do today? Well, it popped right back up. So unfortunately, right, we don't have the cash. We wanted the deposit, so we couldn't add in time. But we're watching stuff, right? Target, that's been moving up, unfortunately, too. And Constellation Brands, that's another name we're looking at. So I was also looking at Whirlpool, and that's been running up. So we're going to see, right, when we get the cash, if there's an opportunity to invest it. But at the same time, right, when the cash hits the account, it doesn't mean we have to go right into the market and invest it. We can hold the cash, okay, and wait. So, right, we're going to see, kind of what happens here once we get the cash into the long-term portfolio to see what could be our next investment. But that's what I have for you guys. That is the news and what you need to be aware of for this week and what we're doing with the investments in the portfolio. So if I don't see from you guys, I hope you have a great Thanksgiving, right? Stay safe if you're traveling, right? Drive slow if you're taking a long commute, right? Be safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.